Hello everyone, good morning and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our webinar on creating impactful banking journeys with digital onboarding. On behalf of Solicious ME, a Yash Technologies company, I am Yomi Vinayaka, your host for the event, and I'm super excited to have you all with us. Yash Technologies is a global service provider an outsourcing provider who helps large and mid-sized organizations digitally transform themselves. With strong presence across six continents, we have enabled enterprises realize business value from their technology investments through our strategic advisory, business consulting, solution architecting, implementation, and support services. Headquartered in Dubai, Solicious Middle East is a wholly owned subsidiary of Yash Technologies and among the largest technology consulting and IT services provider with a murky of customers across the Middle East, Africa, and Central Asia. It is a partner of choice for customers in banking and financial services, oil and gas, healthcare, process manufacturing, and retail verticals. In today's event, our distinguished technology experts with decades of experience in banking and financial services vertical will share their thoughts on driving exceptional customer onboarding experiences. This will be followed by question and answer session. You can share your questions in the chat box as all the attendees will be on mute during the session. The session will be moderated by Gautam Gupta. Gautam Gupta is the Vice President Digital Services EMEA and APAC at Yash Technologies. He's associated with Yash for more than 17 years. He has over 29 plus years of experience in the IT industry. He's responsible for the Yash international market in aligning the company's digital vision with the emerging and futuristic technologies that offer our clients extensive business value while working on an extension to their team. While working as an extension to their team. Possessed with strong leadership, effective decision making, strategic planning, and excellent organization skills, he has led large customer engagements and projects in various verticals like manufacturing, hedge fund, and banking for financials and SLM process for OEMs, etc. Over to you, Gautam.
Thank you so much, Yomi. Thanks for the nice introduction. Welcome all. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. So today's session is going to be an exciting session, and we have got a team of panelists who will bring a lot of experience and thoughts around the current COVID situation and how economic hardship has been brought by this COVID-19. And as a social distancing need seems to be a standard requirement these days, and it will continue for some years, it is important for the banks to enable both its staff and the customers the tools to avoid in-person interaction. And that is where digital onboarding is going to be the first step in engaging the customer journey onto the bank. The ease with which a customer can open an account will set the tone for customer affinity to the journey. It enables organizations to deliver a speedy onboarding customer experience by bringing them together user-friendly interfaces, data, scores, and best-in-class decisioning on the single integrated platform. In today's discussion, we will be talking about how banks can ensure a frictionless and an engaging end-to-end digital onboarding for its customers. And second, what are the other industries other than banks who can leverage the digital onboarding solution? So to discuss that, we have got a team of panelists, and I'm going to introduce them one by one. Our first panelist is Mr. Abdul Aziz Kambar. He's a founder of Dime Global. Abdul Aziz has over 2 decades of experience in leadership positions in the development and management of mega telecommunications and ICT projects. He is currently the CEO and leading regional and global companies with the focus on intelligent and digital transformation with more than and more focus on digital transformation of ICT companies and government-related services. Welcome, Abdul Aziz. Our second panelist in today's session is Mr. Srinivas Tiwari. Mr. Srinivas Tiwari is an enterprise-level technical leader with over 2 decades of relevant IT experience, mostly around banking and financial services. As we call him Srini, Srini has architected several niche solutions in the BFSI space for prestigious customers like ING Bank, Citibank, and so on. Srini is the technology brain behind the Yash digital onboarding solution that we are going to talk about today. And last and not the least, we have got Sumit Kulshresht. He is an SME and product head at Yash Technologies. Sumit has spent almost 2 decades around product innovation in the areas of banking, payments, mobile money, and mobile entertainment. As a part of banking practice at Yash, he is responsible for the product management and user-friendly customer journeys for digital banking products. His areas of interest lies around product innovation, and he is a blogger and shares his view around upcoming trends and relevance. He has spent last few years in GCC region and brings to the table much needed local experience and knowledge. Welcome all. So in today's session, we have structured into 2 parts. First session, we will talk about the thoughts from the esteemed panelists, and in the second section, we will take questions from the audience as well. And I would request all the audience, if you have any questions, please share your questions on the chat box, and we will take it at the end. So let's begin our session today. So I'll holding the dice and I'll roll it. So we've got our first question for Mr. Abdul Aziz. So Mr. Abdul Aziz, the COVID situation is testing all organizations globally. How has MEA organization adapted to this, and how banks are adapting to this new normal?
First of all, good morning to everyone, and thank you very much, Gautam, for the nice and beautiful introduction for all of us. So I'm coming back to your question. How did the COVID situation impacted us globally, and especially in the Middle East and African region? As you are aware, and many of our audience are aware, the COVID situation created a global stress, especially for businesses and customers, where for the first time, we needed to do the businesses away from, let's say, the traditional supply chain and logistics channels that we have. It, in a way, fundamentally disrupted the way we interact with our clients, either we as banks or we as companies or we as governments. We started to understand from health sector perspective, educational sector perspective, and workplace sector perspective, these are the fundamental major ones that has been impacted by COVID, that what are the new norms for them? Do we still need to go to these places, or we can do things remotely? Like the session that we have today, typically we'll have these sessions in our offices. Now we change a little bit the dynamics and we start to have it remotely in different locations. Secondly, it created a major challenges, I think, globally as well as for us in the Middle East and African region, where banks has to change the adaptation to their model due to 2 things. Number one, banks are mainly related in their business aspects in a one-to-one relationship between themselves and the clients, whether this client now is a B2C or a B2B. Similarly, the relationship between the clients to the banks always require that there should be a branch that I approach, a key account manager that I can see and talk with, and a lot of tedious documentation that I have to have a personal visit to these branches and sign them and do some certain processes with them. So all of this has been modified in the last 1.5 years, I think, where we see more and more banks in the Middle East and African region are going branchless and they are going cashless. And at the same time, we saw the phenomenon of 2-3 banks in the Middle East in the last, I think, 6-7 months, that they are operating completely as a digital bank. So this is something we never saw before in the Middle East. The banks could never be fully digital, fully branchless. So this is something that a lot of other banks has to catch up with. Now, banks, aside of all the other institutes that are regulated, has tremendous amount of cash and have tremendous amount of financial gain through which they can really deploy and centralize these transformational technologies. So I think not only banks, but other regulated entities, which we will discuss it later on, they will really benefit a lot from what we call it the digital onboarding of clients or customers. And that's in a nutshell what I think is the major challenges that we have today to adopt to the new norm.
Thank you, Mr. Abdulaziz. I mean, this is certainly the new way of doing banking, and certainly the banks are changing the way they do banking, and of course, their priorities are also changing accordingly. So, my next question is for Mr. Srinivas. So, Srinivas, as Abdulaziz was talking about the new normal and how banking are adopting the new ways of doing banking. Uh, certainly the priorities among the banks are changing as well. So what are the top 5 priorities do you think in retail banks globally, and especially in the view of ongoing pandemic, how the banks are realigning themselves?
Thank you. Hello, good morning all. Like Mr. Abdulaziz was saying, um, there's been a fundamental change in the operating model of several well-established industries, and retail banks globally also have reprioritized their to-do list for the upcoming book of work. One aspect that Mr. Abdulaziz was talking about, the digital only or the neo banks that are coming up as challengers to the existing systems, challenging the existing way of operating. And it is not limited to just startups or fintechs. Even major players like JP Morgan Chase is planning Dynamo in the UK region, a digital only bank. Goldman and Sachs has had Marcus for a couple of years or 3 years now. So that's one priority on relooking at the way the operations are done within a bank. So that's one priority. Second one is the enhanced digital engagement, like automation of existing process. In fact, according to Forbes, 44% of the banks have planned for digital customer onboarding as a top priority for the year 2021. Then there is also a lot of emphasis on open banking, especially nowadays with open finance, where it is more data driven and customer centric. There's also activity in the blockchain for cybersecurity area, where banks plan to share even KYC information or other account related informations. Then we also have challenging aspects of fintechs as a service, where bot-based account service operations are following account-based services operations like food delivery services, Airbnb, and others, where there is reduced staff, which services all accounts to achieve the dynamic and flexible operating model. So these are a few of the priorities that retail banks are looking at globally.
Certainly, Srinivas, and looks like an exciting time for banks to take up these initiatives, especially around blockchain and open security, and also one of the top things that you talked about was the digital customer onboarding. So my next question is to Sumit. What exactly is digital onboarding? I mean, we have been talking about all this time. So can you help us understand what is digital onboarding?
First of all, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, and thanks, Srini, Abdulaziz, Gautam, for the good amount of energy which is being built up in this session. So I'll basically start with one data point which Srini picked up. It basically said that 44% of the banks really want to go digital, and the first choice or the starting point they have is with digital onboarding. And rightly, the question is, what is digital onboarding? I'll just start with a very simple definition. It is an online process where an individual will sign up with, let's say, a bank or any other institution or a government entity in order to access their products and services. Now, as we are, going through this COVID pandemic situation, and this is supposed to, continue for quite some near future, which we are all experiencing, it is also must to minimize any personal level of interaction between the individuals, and therefore there is an accelerated shift in, moving towards the digital, and that is basically commanding all the new relationship with, let's say, banking industry as well, wherein an individual who wants to associate with a bank would like to really, initiate a digital journey rather than a physical journey by going to a bank. Banks have been really good in, with this transformation. In last couple of years, we have observed, many banks across GCC and are, introducing mobile banking, doing some innovations on digital, but still we see there is a heavy lifting of friction being done over there in terms of a lot of documentation being involved. There are different maturities of digital onboarding products. So what happens is that these traditional processes, in terms of documentation, there is a pain of filling of application which is gone from the end user side. But still, there is a staff which is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Now the actual process demands, efficiency across the entire ecosystem, or we can basically say it is a value chain. Now, digital onboarding, if I have to put up, it should be a system which is a process of completely self-service from the end customer point of view when they're interacting with the platform. And also it should basically cover all the compliance related requirements, the video checks from the banking perspective, all the KYC AML checks, fulfilling all the regulatory requirements, and also understanding who this end user is. Is he a politically exposed person, taking declarations from the FATCA perspective, so that when banks get this form or an application digitally, they're not spending a lot of time in approving this person. It is all being done through technology, through a mobile application which is very seamlessly doing this journey for the end user. Hence, I think customer onboarding is is the beginning of establishing a deeper engagement with this end user. It's a very crucial, if I just want to say, it's a very crucial product from the bank's perspective, because this is where the end user will start also forming an opinion about how best this particular bank will understand me or take me, through my entire life process of my savings, etc., which I'm going to keep with this bank. So this is the entry point of engagement, and so I really feel digital onboarding is really crucial. Over to you, Gautam.
Thank you so much, and thanks for beautiful description of what is digital onboarding. And I'm sure with the right customer experience, digital onboarding is going to go a long way. Not only just for the banks, but also in other industries as well. So with that question, it's time for our first poll question, and we'll let the poll question come onto your screen, and we'll give you about 30 seconds to choose between yes and no. The question is, at present, does your bank has real-time eKYC integration for verifying new customers? So I'll repeat the question. At present, does your bank has real-time eKYC integration for verifying new customers? The options that you have is either yes or no. So we'll give you 30 seconds, and then we'll move on to the next question. Okay, I think most of you would have made the choices. So we will move on to our next question is for Mr. Abdul Aziz. Mr. Abdul Aziz, is digital onboarding specific to just banking, or do you think, or do you see use cases in other industries as well?
Thank you very much, Gautam. As Sumit indicated, the digital onboarding process itself involves a lot of stakeholders, not only the banks who needs to do all of these activities, but as well as different stakeholders. Could be employees, could be government entities, could be regulatory related processes. So in a nutshell, I believe, and we saw this trend now happening in the Middle East and Africa, we saw a lot of regulated entities are going more and more toward the digital onboarding technology. If you look at the banking sector probably has the most regulated and the toughest environment where they need to do the onboarding through a lot of, let's say, stakeholder. That will also involve sometimes biometric checking for their onboarding process, especially due to the fraud and money laundering activities that the banks are forced to do. But if we take as an example the telecommunication sector, which is the second largest, I think, regulated businesses in the world, the telco sector are going through an evolution where they will have eSIM card, which is an electronic SIM card that we push it to the handsets of the consumer without the need of the consumer coming to any branch and getting a physical SIM card. Now that creates a major challenge for the operator, that how can they do all of this in a seamless way without the consumer visiting the branch and without the need to do the physical signature on some documents. And for all of this, they will need to have a digital onboarding technology to be more specific for that kind of use. Another highlight that we've been discussing in Bahrain as a government, we've been talking to some ministers on the initiative that how do we create the more digitized services from government perspective for these services to approach the citizens rather than the citizens approaching the government and the branches of the government. So also this will need and require a digital onboarding process, as Sumit indicated, where these technologies will support a seamless mechanism to bring the customer on board to the company and fulfill the needs of all the stakeholders, whether they are regulated stakeholders or there are employees or internal processes. So this is in a nutshell what I believe that a lot of, let's say, companies and government entities will be really in a big need for the digital onboarding moving forward.
Absolutely, Mr. Abdul Aziz. This is going to be very exciting when we have all these different entities, whether it is government or private sector entities, are all integrated into a single integrated platform where you can verify and onboard a customer onto your services. So this is going to be an exciting stuff going forward. So this is very interesting. So thank you for your thoughts. And moving on to our next question is from Mr. Srinivas. You know, all the things that Mr. Abdul Aziz was talking about cannot be done without the backbone of technology. And as we have seen, in this tough times, the technology has been playing an increasingly important role in banks to go digital. So in what is your opinion and thoughts, and what technology can play a role in digital onboarding?
Well, like in any other digital or online solution, just like any other solution, digital onboarding also requires some of the latest and greatest technologies. This is required for providing a seamless and smooth customer onboarding. It also helps to adhere to regulatory compliance requirements and also helps us increase operational efficiencies. So some of the things that actually are very, very, very useful is one part is the security, which anything to do with online and digital technologies need to be secure. More so if it is banking related, because all the finances of individuals and corporates are tied to this particular account that they actually plan to open. Digital onboarding involves capturing and processing personally identifiable information, and that also comes from handheld devices. Therefore, authentication, authorization, securing data and rest, and while data is in motion, are really, really critical. Similarly, from an operational processing perspective, one of the key steps is to capture and process documents which contain sensitive information. Like some of the documents might be national ID or passport address or a passport, address proof, and so on. Now, usage of greatest and latest technologies like artificial intelligence, different machine learning algorithms, different chatbots to actually automate different processes will not only help speed up the process, but it also helps us eliminate human errors. Similarly, from an integration point of view, a digital onboarding system requires integration with several internal systems of the banks, whether it is core banking, messaging, or it could be external integrations that are required, like anti-money laundering or eKYC list. Therefore, having a right integration strategy for various layers, whether internal or external, actually helps achieve real-time processing as well as increase efficiency and at the same time being compliant. Last but not the least, from a technology perspective, it is really important that we have an engaging customer experience because as the complex onboarding process, which is typically guided by bank staff in physical presence, is being by the end customer, it is important to have very intuitive, engaging customer experience with the help of native APIs from Android, iOS, and so on. So yes, technology does play a major role in several aspects of implementation of the solution and design.
Definitely, Srinivas, and technology is going to be the backbone for not only the banking but also for the other industries in future. And as you rightly said, security, operational processing, integration technology, whether it is AI or ML or the customer user experience, all these are going to be, the first choice of for banks to, introduce them as quickly as possible. But at the same time, we've also seen a lot of fintech companies or product companies who are providing services and product to banks. They have started mushrooming because of the availability of technologies, and then they at times have been very, very productive in creating niche products for the banks. So my next question is for Sumit on the same lines. Sumit, do you think the fintech or the fintech products are going to be a competition to banks in future?
That's a very interesting question, Gautam. And let me tell you, it could actually be a million or $1 billion question. And being very honest, the answer lies between yes and no. So there is not, I'm not able to, I won't be able to give you a very clear-cut answer here, but I have my opinion. And so basically, the way I see it, it's all linked to the evolution of technology. The way the technology has evolved, it has led to creation of new business models, new products, new services, and that has been the reason of why fintechs, became into existence or came into existence. And they have definitely challenged banks with their innovative solutions, especially in the areas of, let's say, payments, lending businesses, credit worthiness, and just to quote some examples. But an initial these such initial innovations, what were also observed in the UK market, let's say starting with Revolut, it did not started as a bank, but eventually had to take a banking license because in store of customer funds, etc. So a lot of regulations. So, and banks are also at the same time innovating more and more from the technology perspective. We were speaking about emergence of digital only banks in the Middle East region, and they are doing well, acquiring customers at a faster pace than ever before. So all this is actually a reflection of that fintech and banks will probably coexist. So I really don't see that fintechs will ever displace banks, but what I see is that it is going to be the customer centric engagement. Whosoever is able to do that will actually be able to command the customer service. Now, for me, this is more of a collaborative model than a competitive model, because consider a bank. As a bank, I may have a very small segment where a very specific product requirement, let's say a credit worthiness product, or let's say a credit product. Now, as a bank, I may not want to give that product to all of my customer segments. I may do a collaboration with one of the emerging fintechs who only specialize in this. And what I'm able to do is a better customer experience, faster time to market, and in this competitive landscape, I'm able to attract few more customers onto my banking platform. And hence, I completely believe that this is a collaborative coexistence which will be required to basically move towards the marketplace of financial services.
And absolutely, Sumit, and you rightly concluded your thought. It is going to be a collaborative way of doing business. So nobody is going to be able to lead the market on their own. So fintech companies are definitely going to be an asset to the banks, but the banks also need to work with the fintech companies to move forward. So obviously, all these changes with the technologies, with the new processes, there are a lot of challenges that the banks see moving forward, and some of them are global, some of them are localized to the market. So my next question is for Mr. Abdul Aziz. What are the common challenges do you see, while adopting digital onboarding solutions in your region?
Okay. I'll add my voice to what Sumit said. It's about this enjoyable customer experience that if fintech or banks they could create it, then these clients will definitely approach you as a servicing entity. So digitizing the process itself is not enough. I think this is where probably the misperception is that if we just do it using a technology piece, it will resolve the matter and we have digital onboarding. And it's not true. The digital onboarding really goes through a very tedious process of not only deploying technology, but really looking at your customer journey, how the customer is onboarding. Is it using a mobile application? Does the mobile application after that require certain interaction? How do you welcome the customer experience when they join you? In a branch environment, it's easy. You can welcome them and greet them, present to them, let's say, or service them with a coffee and tea and a chocolate. Now, how do you bring that kind of beautiful experience into the digital ecosystem? So this requires the banks especially to look at how the onboarding process is happening, how they are in compliance with their KYC, their AML, as Sumit said earlier, but making sure that this journey itself is an enjoyable journey. The customer should not feel during this process that they are again scrutinized under certain documentation and regulation needs, because it's an opportunity for the banks and for the companies to attract these audiences to be for them and not to go to their competitors. Yes, we do want to collaborate, as Sumit said, between the fintech and the banks, but at the same time, we want to actually create the competition where we entice certain customer aspects to come only to us because we are evolving through these new technologies. Now, similarly, due to the fact that we are using a digital onboarding piece of technology and a process, it will support us to collect better data. What does that mean? In a data environment like the one we are living today with big data analytics and so on, this becomes the next big things that we as institute, whether we are banks, telecommunication, governments, we will benefit from this to service these customers on different aspects, not only locally but globally. It allows us to have a global aspects of our customer for the first time, because now the customer is telling us so many things that typically during let's say a visit to a branch of a bank will not be done. Yeah? Since they are sitting at their own convenient location and using the complete digital onboarding technology to onboard themselves, they feel more relaxed to share with you. Yeah? So this I think creates a challenge as well, because these are new inputs that typically the banks and the telecommunication and other companies has not been looking into it and has not been looking into how do you benefit from that and how do you collect all of this. So again, I think I agree with Sumit, and I put my voice as well with Serena Paz, that most of these digital onboarding technology will create a new norm. whether it's in security perspective, whether it's how do we approach and deal with the customer, how do we comply to regulatory related requirements like KYC, ML, and in the telco sector, there are different requirements than the banking sector. All of this will create now a new user experience to be digitized for complete digital entities to approach their customer.
Well, absolutely, Mr. Abdul Aziz. Definitely, the user experience and the ease of onboarding a customer onto the bank will determine, how far the banks can go in attracting and retaining their customers, and that is their paramount importance. So, integrating all the back offices and all these processes is definitely of paramount importance. So, a lot of challenges banks will see, not only integrating them within themselves, but also uh, integrating externally. So all these are challenges could be localized as well as could be global. So thank you for your thoughts, and that leads us to a time for a second poll question. And before I do that, I would just like to remind our audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it on the chat box. We will take all of these questions at the end of the session. So just raise your hand, go to the chat box and put your question there. So okay, so moving on, time for second poll question. Team, if you can bring us the question again on the screen. And the question is, would you expect your digital customer onboarding application to support below variant apart from standard saving, checking, salary account opening? The options that you have is minor accounts, joint accounts, cater to PEP, PATCA categories, or any others. So we'll give you 30 seconds to respond to this poll question, and then we'll move on to Sumit for the next question. Okay, so it's time for the next question for Mr. Sumit. Sumit, as Abdul Aziz was talking about, right? I mean, there's a lot of challenges in putting this onboarding solution, of course, initially, and one of them is complying to the regulatory perspective, because there are so many documents that you need to comply with, the processes and so on. So in your opinion, what are the key highlights from the regulatory perspective in the region? What do you see?
Sure, Gautam. So the way I have observed or I have seen is that the whole GCC or MEA market was largely a bank-based, and which is largely domestically owned or family-owned bank businesses. Now things are modifying. There are investments which are growing. There is technology openness in the market now, and now even from the regulatory perspective, what we've observed is there is a welcome move by the regulators towards the digital initiatives. And I would actually like to quote, few examples from different, countries in the region, and let's say also from Indian subcontinent. So I would like to start with, let's say, UAE. UAE introduced Smart Pass, which is UAE Pass for eKYC. It basically simplifies the whole journey from the end user perspective. It's just a consent driven onboarding. So as a bank application, I can request it, get a consent from the end user, and offer them services up and running in, let's say, even less than you know the time required to make a cup of coffee or something. Similarly, other initiatives was like in Abu Dhabi, they collaborated with a fintech solution provider, Sunline, to start innovate different digital initiatives in the country. UAE regulators and couple of other concerning bodies, they initiated guidelines in this month itself on creating guidelines for all the financial institutions in adoption of digital technologies. All these are basically indicators of regulators being, you know, driving propensity towards digital initiatives. Similarly, in KSA, last year they issued digital banking licenses. This year they announced their open banking policy paper supposed to be, put into action by the H1 H2 of 2022, which will again drive a lot of innovations being to open banking initiatives. Bahrain, announced eKYC in February this year. Bahrain also announced readiness for open banking in May. They already have a live open banking environment in the country. Similarly, Oman, in their vision paper 2040, have shown propensity towards digital initiatives, and banks are moving into that direction. Again, I see KYC and digital onboarding to be the initial initiatives, which will go through that path. Similarly, Qatar is in their vision 2030 have supported completely digitized transformation initiatives, and banking regulator is completely focusing on that how digital can actually solve problems and drive inclusion for so many Qataris and the kind of migrants which come to the countries. Kuwait, similar to UAE, they also have My Kuwait ID, which is owned by PASI, which is the civil ID. And again, it's a consent-driven app which can be utilized by financial providers, fintechs, etc., to do eKYC. So what I'm trying to get at is there are many initiatives in the GCC countries itself, which shows that this is here to stay. This will actually is handholding from the end user perspective and is very commanding. Moving slightly away from, let's say, going towards Africa, I was reading about Egypt, and I found that Egypt has also done a test bed on eKYC, and they basically created the whole set of mandates for the banks to go digital, drive digital onboarding last year. So again, COVID times. I think COVID definitely was, an instrument which propelled the digital growth. Talking about Indian subcontinent, last month I was reading one of the RBI articles. And they initiated the completely video-based KYC process for banks, etc. Similarly, Sri Lanka, in their initiative last year, they were promoting, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka was promoting digital onboarding initiatives. They have also announced open banking framework to basically create accessible financial services for the laborers, etc., to drive financial inclusion. So the idea is that it's completely observed that the GCC, Middle East, initiatives are there. So countries like Bahrain are slightly ahead, driving some maturity. KSA is adopting it, which is a very large consumer market. So I see that the highlights from the regulatory perspective is really, really conducive for the growth of their digital transformation by the banks. And I think regulators have also become quite accommodating. Uh, that's what I perceive right now. Gautam.
Okay, thank you, Sumit. Definitely looks like not only the GCC countries, but also the African nations as well as the Indian subcontinent countries are also moving towards an integrated platform. So this is definitely a good, exciting time. So around the same lines, my next question is to Mr. Srinivas. I mean, you have been instrumental in building and designing this digital onboarding solution for Yash. You know, how is this solution going to be helpful for banks in the Middle East?
Well, we have designed and built this digital onboarding solution, primarily keeping the security aspects, regulatory aspects, operational efficiency, and customer experience needs. At the same time, we have kept the time to market needs also in mind by designing it as a highly configurable and flexible solution. Some of the key highlights of the solution are right from the architecture to design to build and deploy. It is based on plug and play. This can sit within the existing mobile banking apps of the banks, or it could be an individual part. It also has several modules for seamless integration with banks' ecosystems. It can bring its own AML, KYC, or SDN list, or it could easily integrate with existing banks' KYC, AML through API gateways. Regulatory reporting also, either it could be in the app or it can be integrated with existing report or reporting systems that the bank has. We also have like really exhaustive sanctions list screening, where we screen for designated individuals and nations. Overall, what we have tried to do is to, with the plug and play architecture and with all the features that I mentioned, we have kept the implementation timeline within 10 weeks. So right from once the process begins, within 10 weeks, we can actually go to market.
Thank you, Srinivas. I'm sure this onboarding solution that we have bringing to the table will solve a lot of the pain areas that most of the small, mid-size, or larger banks are currently going through. So, definitely this is a good, exciting product that we all would like to see and get adopted by all the banks in the EMEA region. So, on the same lines, Sumit, what is our go-to-market strategy for our digital onboarding solution, and what can bank expect from Yash Technologies around this?
So I think I first speak from the end customer's point of view. So from the end customer's point of view, what they are looking from their banking institutions is now actually, their expectations are good, getting from enough to more, so they basically are expecting them to understand them better so that better products can be offered to these individual customers. Now, which basically means that digital onboarding, which basically, like I said in the beginning of the discussion, it is the first step where the end customer is forming an opinion. So I think this is an area which really significantly requires a better customer experience. Now, with that, if you have onboarded a customer, so basically you are going to deeply engage that customer. Now, basically, because of these ideologies, you can completely get solid returns out of digital onboarding, because it will reduce your cost, your times to onboard the customer is reduced. You are faster able to give your products and services to them, so they will engage faster with you. Now, having said that, the Yash's digital onboarding solution, which Srini was detailing about, it is basically built on the principles of mobile first approach, which means that it is all about ensuring a simplified customer experience with assistive tools to handle customers in their digital journey so that the abandon rates are as low as possible. All this is achieved through the API technology, which is easily integrated in any environment. And like Srini mentioned, in less than 10 weeks, you are up and running, ready to onboard your customers digitally. The team which is actually there for the implementation, they work alongside the bankers team to understand the nuances of their technology framework, their architecture, their core banking system, the APIs, and all the data dictionaries which are required to actually do the what we say the plumbing work, right? And based on that, the team is able to come out with the final recommendation as to that what is going to be the solution to start with, which can be implemented in the least time frame and the fastest rollout. And this is the approach that we go in with. And we have been doing this for digitizing for 100 plus organizations, not only in Middle East but across other countries like other regions like North America, Europe, and couple of initiatives in the subcontinent as well. Yash has 25 plus years of experience, and the workforce, which is more than 6,000, we ensure that we are able to deliver what we commit. So I think it's a good story to go in with, and basically this is basically is going to give a great return on investment for any of the banks.
Certainly, it will be, Sumit, and I think this is a great solution, and I would request anyone from the banking sector, or for that matter, anyone from the other domains like insurance or telecommunication, if they are looking for an onboarding solution, Yash brings you that solution. So, you can reach out to us at info@yash.com, or you can find details on our website as well for, these solutions. And we will be happy to give you a demo or download the collaterals as you deem necessary. So I think with that, we bring to the end of part one of this session. I think we had a very insightful session with all the panelists, sharing their thoughts around the what is digital onboarding and what are the various platforms available and what are the challenges that we see. And I think it is apparent that the digital customer onboarding for banking is a game changer in providing seamless experiences, reduce customer fallouts, speed up customer welcome process, and verify digital identities and remain compliant to the regulator. The customer experience element of the digital onboarding ensures that the customers are hand-holding, and this is achieved through the self-service assisted model. Also, not only banks, other industries can also get benefited with the digital onboarding solution. Technology evolution with artificial intelligence and machine learning plays an important role in ensuring the onboarding solution for the end user is seamless and user friendly. So thank you for staying with us. Moving on for our next session, which is going to be audience Q&A. And if you have any questions, please write it on the chat box. We'll be happy to answer those as we go along. So I will pass on the floor to Yomi to take on the questions from the audience. Yomi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Gautam. Well, wasn't that truly intriguing? We started with banking and see how digital onboarding is effective in every industry. Our audience will agree because I see a lot of questions floating in for our panelists. The first question is by Mr. Raja. Is there any document, short presentation, or article highlighting the ideal steps required to follow successfully digitized bank's onboarding process? Srinivas, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, sure. So we have a lot of collateral, like Gautam was just mentioning. We can reach out to the participants who are interested in knowing more on the actual steps that are involved, or what are the ideal steps that need to be thought through while designing this solution. So yeah, we can reach out, yes.
Thank you so much, Srinivas. The next question is from Mr. Tariq, who wants to know SAB and corporate digital onboarding side of it as well. Sumit, would you like to answer this? Would you like to throw some light here?
Sure. So yeah, thanks Tariq for the question, and I think this is a very important question to be addressed. So like individuals, digital onboarding, corporates, digital onboarding is equally important, and we understand that this is slightly different. It is complex in nature, and from Yash's perspective, we are already working on our roadmap to build on the the corporate digital onboarding, starting with, let's say, one person company, or the companies which have limited number of shareholders. We completely understand that this journey also can be digitized. So it can actually begin with identifying that who that shareholder is. So we understand that I can actually fill up the application on, let's say, Yash's behalf, but eventually I need to give proofs of Yash's corporate identity, like MOA, shareholding pattern, etc. Now there are few initiatives which are already there, and the regulators are again helping in this field as well. So one example which I would like to quote here is again from Bahrain, and Bahrain has a corporate portal called Sigilat, and it can actually be integrated digitally, and you just need to basically put in the company registration number, and you can pull out the information of that company into a digital application. Now such initiatives are happening in the market, and I think with these sort of initiatives maturing, we can definitely enable corporate digital onboarding as well.
Thank you so much, Sumit. Next question, and I would like Mr. Abdul Aziz to answer this. Are there any examples of digital onboarding tool being used by telecos for eKYC? Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. In the UAE, there is one of the operator who actually tried to go on a mobile this digital onboarding platform. And during that process, they don't need actually to take the ID from the person. They will just use the mobile application to onboard themselves. And this is where our earlier discussion, as we said, that the digital onboarding is not only it's an eKYC process, it's actually the whole onboarding process. So with this company as an example, one of the drawbacks that they had, that they did everything digitally, but when it comes to the last step where you will get let's say the SIM card, you still will receive the SIM card. Sorry, you still receive the SIM card at your place, but after you receive the SIM card by 4 or 5 days or 1 week as a grace period, you still have to visit the branch and physically sign a piece of paper. So again, this it showcases that operators are really eager to go for a complete digital onboarding solution. And I think by that time, companies like Yash and others was not in the market pursuing them. So they went with a semi-cooked approach. Now, if you allow me, I want to share another example, not related from telecom, but related to something that's majorly evolving in the Middle East market and the GCC for the audience. Most of the companies now are going digitally on an e-commerce platform, and they try to sell the goods using e-commerce. But interestingly, after you do the whole process of onboarding yourself, delivering the goods, they still ask the customer that they have to sign a document upon receiving the goods. So again, we see the dilemma that this kind of or this piece of the digital onboarding is really needed there, because it's not yet a completely digital process and a digital journey for the customer. And in the last, I think, year and a half, we have more than probably 20 to 30 e-commerce companies that are popping up and operating, including Amazon in the Middle East market, in Saudi Arabia and UAE. In Bahrain, we have at least 4 or 5 new e-commerce companies, in Kuwait the same. So we see the needs for this digital onboarding, not only in the process of activating the customer, but also in the process of closing and maintaining the life cycle with the customer.
Brilliant, that is. Next question I have here. We have a different software for digital banking for our customers. Can digital onboarding solution get integrated to it? Or will it be used as a standalone app? Srinivas, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah. So we, like I was mentioning earlier, we have designed it in such a flexible way that this can be relatively easily integrated into a bank's existing mobile banking application, or if required, it can be rolled out as an independent app as well. Sure.
Thank you so much. I wish we could have taken all the questions, but considering the time, we might have to wrap up soon. So just few more questions to go. Next question is, what are the top 5 ways Yash Digital Onboarding Solution guarantees simplified and efficient customer experience? So Meet, would you like to answer this question?
Sure, thanks, Yami. I'll go for it. So, like we were discussing throughout the session, the digital onboarding, like I was saying, it's the most crucial aspect. And we completely understand that today's consumer themselves are very time constrained. So, what we have taken as the top 5 priorities for ourselves, overarching one is the mobile first approach, so which guarantees the overall user experience. It's a completely automated user interface, reduced steps, minimal user inputs to basically guarantee that this is extremely feels seamless while you're navigating through the complete journey. Clear instructions. Second point will be the clear instructions and the instant feedback. Very simply put, if there is a scan happening and it's blurry, we will inform the end user right there on screen so that the corrective action can be taken immediately. It supports multiple IDs of different variation. We have observed in countries that in every couple of years the ID design changes now, which also the technology has to keep adapting to it. So we have taken care of those adaptations as well. Srini just mentioned that the platform is cross-platform. There is architecture support. It supports standalone model. It supports a perfect fit into your existing business processes. And as a fifth priority, last but not the least, it's the, one of the topmost priorities as the compliance. So we take care of KYC, AML, data privacy, the security elements, and any regulatory aspect. So Yash will be there to basically take care of all that in the complete journey, so that the whole journey can be proved to be legitimate and fit for launch.
Thank you so much, Sumit. This brings us to the end of our webinar. Time's keeping on ticking, and we couldn't answer all the questions that are coming to us today. So if we couldn't answer your question, please feel free to reach out to us or need more information. You can write to us at info@yash.com or on the mail ID dos@yash.com. Also, we are available on all social media channels, including LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Do look out for us. We look forward to staying in touch with you all. We are grateful for your enthusiasm and participation today. Thank you for joining us today. Have a nice day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.